I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd end up living in a motel at 63 years old, staring at a suitcase full of cash and wondering if karma had finally decided to pay attention. But here I am. And if you've ever been thrown away like yesterday's trash by someone you trusted, someone you helped build from nothing, then you'll understand every single word I'm about to tell you. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from, because I promise you, no matter where you are in this world, betrayal cuts the same way everywhere. And before we get too deep into this, do yourself a favor and check the description box below for more stories like this one. Stories about people who refused to stay down when life knocked them flat. My name is Beverly Hartman, and this is the story of how I lost everything, found something I never knew existed, and learned that revenge doesn't always look the way you think it will. It started with my daughter, Christine. My beautiful, brilliant, stubborn daughter who married a man I never fully trusted but learned to accept because she loved him. His name was Derek Walsh, and when they got married 12 years ago, he was charming, ambitious, and completely broke. I mean the kind of broke where he showed up to their engagement party in shoes with holes in the soles that he tried to hide by standing with his feet at an angle. I didn't judge him for that. I grew up poor myself, raised by a single mother who cleaned houses in the suburbs of Pittsburgh just to keep us fed. I knew what it meant to claw your way up from nothing. So when Derek looked me in the eye at their rehearsal dinner and promised he'd take care of my daughter, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I owned a small but successful property management company in Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy, but it paid well. I managed residential properties, handled tenant disputes, coordinated maintenance, and over 20 years, I'd built a reputation for being fair, efficient, and reliable. I had 6 employees, a modest office in a strip mall, and enough savings to feel secure. Not rich. Just comfortable. Just enough to help Christine and Derek when they needed it. And they needed it often. First, it was a loan for Derek's car when his old one died 2 months after the wedding. Then it was help with the down payment on their first house. Then it was covering Christine's medical bills when she had complications with her pregnancy and their insurance didn't cover everything. Then it was seed money for Derek's business idea, which turned out to be a consulting firm that never quite got off the ground. I gave it all willingly. That's what mothers do. We give until there's nothing left, and then we find something else to give. I told myself I was investing in their future, in their happiness, in my grandson's stability. Little Nathan was 4 years old, the light of my entire life, and if keeping his parents afloat meant I worked a few extra years before retirement, then so be it. But here's the thing about giving too much: you stop noticing when people stop being grateful. You stop noticing when they start expecting it. And you definitely stop noticing when they start resenting you for it. Derek started working for me 3 years ago. He'd been out of work for almost 6 months, bouncing between temp jobs and half-hearted applications to companies that never called him back. Christine was exhausted, working double shifts as a nurse just to cover their mortgage, and I could see the strain eating away at their marriage. So I offered Derek a position. Assistant property manager. Good pay, benefits, flexibility. I didn't need the extra help, but I convinced myself it made sense. I told myself I was helping my family. He accepted, but he didn't say thank you. He said, finally, something to work with. I should have paid attention to that. Derek was good at the job, I'll give him that. He was organized, professional with tenants, and had a way of talking people into paying late rent without it turning into a fight. Within a year, he'd taken over most of the day-to-day operations, and I was able to step back a little, spend more time with Nathan, think about maybe actually retiring in a few years. That's when I hired Monica Brennan. Monica was 28, fresh out of a bad divorce, and desperate for work. She'd been a paralegal before her ex-husband drained their bank accounts and disappeared, leaving her with debt and a young daughter to raise on her own. She came into my office with a resume that was half blank and eyes that looked like they'd cried out every tear they had. I saw myself in her. I saw every woman who'd ever been left behind and told to figure it out alone. So I hired her as an administrative assistant. I paid her more than I probably should have, let her bring her daughter to the office when daycare fell through, gave her advances on her paycheck when she needed them. I wanted to help her the way someone had helped me once, a lifetime ago. I didn't know I was handing my son-in-law a loaded gun. It started small. Or maybe it started long before I noticed, and the small things were just the moments I finally couldn't ignore anymore. Derek started staying late at the office. Monica started dressing differently, nothing inappropriate, just more put together, more effort. They laughed too loudly at each other's jokes. They had too many work meetings that I wasn't invited to. Christine didn't see it. Or maybe she did, and she didn't want to believe it. She was so tired all the time, running herself into the ground at the hospital, coming home to a husband who barely looked up from his phone and a son who needed her attention. She'd lost weight. She didn't smile as much. When I asked her if everything was okay, she snapped at me for the first time in years. Not everyone needs you to fix their life, Mom. I backed off. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself Derek wouldn't be that stupid, that cruel, that reckless. I told myself Monica wouldn't betray me like that after everything I'd done for her. I was wrong. If you've ever had that moment where your gut just knows something is wrong, even when your brain is still trying to rationalize it away, hit the subscribe button. Because you're going to want to hear how this plays out. Trust me. I found out on a Tuesday in March, 6 months ago. It was one of those gray, drizzly Ohio days where the sky looks like wet concrete and everything feels heavier than it should. I'd left the office early to pick up Nathan from preschool because Christine had called in sick, and when I swung by their house to drop him off, Derek's car wasn't in the driveway. Christine was in bed, pale and shaking, and when I asked her where Derek was, she looked at me with eyes so hollow it made my chest hurt. "He's with her," she whispered. "He's been with her for months." I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because the next thing I knew I was on the edge of her bed, holding her while she sobbed into my shoulder. She told me everything. How she'd found the messages on his phone 2 weeks earlier. How he'd confessed, said it was a mistake, said it didn't mean anything. How he'd promised to end it, and then she'd caught them together again, in his car, parked outside a diner on the east side of town. She'd confronted him. He'd told her she was overreacting. That Monica understood him in a way Christine didn't anymore. That he felt trapped in their marriage, suffocated by her expectations, exhausted by her constant complaints. He blamed her. For his affair. For his unhappiness. For everything. And then he walked out. I sat there, holding my daughter while she fell apart, and I felt something inside me crack open. Not sadness. Not even shock. Just this cold, clear rage that spread through my chest like ice water. He'd used me. He'd used my company, my money, my trust. He'd destroyed my daughter. And he'd done it with an employee I'd hired, a woman I'd helped, a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just held Christine and waited for her to fall asleep, and then I drove to my office. It was almost 6 in the evening. The lights were still on. Derek's car was in the parking lot. So was Monica's. I walked in quietly. The front office was empty. I could hear voices coming from the back conference room, low and intimate. I moved down the hallway, my shoes silent on the worn carpet, and I stood outside the door for a long moment, listening. They were laughing. Not guilty laughter. Not nervous laughter. Just easy, comfortable laughter. The kind people share when they think they've gotten away with something. I pushed the door open. They sprang apart like teenagers caught making out in a basement. Monica's face went sheet white. Derek just looked annoyed. "Beverly," he said, like I was the one interrupting something important. "We were just finishing up some paperwork." I looked at Monica. Her lipstick was smudged. Her blouse was half untucked. "Get out," I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was flat, cold, completely empty. "Get your things and get out. You're fired." Monica's eyes filled with tears. "Beverly, please, I can explain." "Now." She left. I didn't watch her go. I kept my eyes on Derek. "We need to talk," he said. "No," I said. "We don't. You can't fire her for this. That's. I can fire her for whatever I want. And you're done too." He laughed. Actually laughed. "You're firing me? For what? Having a personal life? For screwing my employee in my office while my daughter is at home crying because you destroyed her?" His face hardened. "Christine and I are none of your business. You made it my business when you started working for me. When you took my money. When you stood in my house and ate my food and let my grandson call you daddy while you were planning to blow up his entire life." He stepped closer. I could smell his cologne, the same one Christine had bought him for Christmas. "You know what your problem is, Beverly? You think everyone owes you something. You think because you helped us, because you gave us money, you own us. You don't. You're just a bitter old woman who can't let go. I felt the words hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. Get out of my building. Gladly. He grabbed his jacket off the back of a chair. And for the record, Monica's worth 10 of you. At least she doesn't spend every conversation reminding me how much I owe her. He walked past me, shoulder-checking me hard enough that I stumbled. I stood there alone in that conference room for a long time, staring at the half-empty coffee cups on the table, the rumpled papers, the chair pushed too far from the table. And I realized I'd just made everything worse. The next 2 weeks were a blur of lawyers, phone calls, and watching my daughter fall apart in slow motion. Derek didn't come home. He moved into Monica's apartment, a cramped one-bedroom in a complex I used to manage until the landlord sold it off 5 years ago. Christine filed for divorce within days, but Ohio's a slow state for that kind of thing, and the process was going to take months. In the meantime, Derek hired a lawyer, a good one, expensive, the kind I knew he couldn't afford unless someone was bankrolling him, and suddenly we weren't just dealing with a broken marriage. We were dealing with a custody battle. He wanted joint custody of Nathan. 50-50. He claimed Christine was unstable, that she was turning their son against him, that she was using me to manipulate the situation. It was bullshit. All of it. But his lawyer was smart, and Derek had always been good at playing the victim. Christine couldn't afford a lawyer. Not a real one. She'd already burned through her savings covering the mortgage on her own, and her hospital had cut her hours because she kept calling in sick. I offered to pay for her attorney, but she refused at first, too proud, too broken. It took me 3 days of gentle pushing before she finally agreed. I paid the retainer. Then I paid the next invoice. Then the one after that. I wasn't rich, but I had savings. Money I'd put away for retirement, for emergencies, for maybe buying a little cabin up near Lake Erie where I could spend my last good years watching the water. I started pulling from it. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones. Meanwhile, my business was falling apart. Firing Derek had left me short-staffed right at the beginning of lease renewal season, and I'd underestimated how much he'd been handling. Tenants started calling with complaints that didn't get addressed. Maintenance requests piled up. 2 of my biggest property owners called to say they were moving their contracts to a bigger firm because they'd heard about instability in my company. I knew Derek was behind it. He still had contacts, still had relationships with vendors and property owners. He was poisoning the well, making sure I paid for firing him. Monica was gone, but the damage was done. I had to hire someone new, fast, and I made the mistake of hiring the first person who applied, a guy named Todd who seemed competent in the interview but turned out to be a nightmare. He showed up late, botched invoices, and got into a screaming match with a tenant that nearly ended in a lawsuit. I fired him after 3 weeks, but by then, 2 more property owners had pulled their contracts. My revenue dropped by 40% in 2 months. I stopped taking a salary. I used my personal savings to cover payroll for my remaining employees, to keep the lights on, to pay Christine's legal bills. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I'd rebuild. But the hole kept getting deeper. Christine's lawyer fought hard, but Derek's was better. He painted Christine as an overworked, emotionally unstable mother who relied too heavily on her own mother and couldn't provide a stable home environment. He brought up the fact that she'd been calling in sick to work, that she'd lost weight, that Nathan had mentioned grandma lives with us now to his preschool teacher. None of it was true. I didn't live with them. I was just there constantly, helping, because Christine couldn't do it alone and Derek sure as hell wasn't. But the truth didn't matter. What mattered was the story Derek's lawyer could tell. In June, the judge issued a temporary custody arrangement. Joint custody. 50-50. 1 week with Christine, 1 week with Derek. Nathan didn't understand. He cried every time he had to go to Derek's apartment, clinging to Christine's legs, begging not to leave. Derek would peel him off with this tight smile on his face, and I'd see Monica standing in the doorway behind him, watching, and I'd feel that cold rage settle deeper into my bones. Christine stopped eating. She dropped below 100 pounds. Her supervisor at the hospital put her on mandatory leave and told her she couldn't come back until she saw a therapist. She couldn't afford a therapist. I paid for that too. By July, I'd burned through most of my savings. I took out a line of credit against my business, something I swore I'd never do, and used it to keep things afloat. But it wasn't enough. I lost another property contract. Then another. In August, I had to let go of 2 of my 4 remaining employees. Good people. People who'd been with me for years. I cried in my office after they left, the kind of ugly crying where you can't catch your breath and your whole body shakes. I was 63 years old, and I was failing. At everything. And then, in early September, Derek's lawyer filed a motion claiming that Christine was financially unstable and that I was enabling her dependence. They argued that Nathan's primary residence should be with Derek, who had secured stable employment and was providing a healthy 2-parent household with Monica. A 2-parent household. With the woman he'd cheated with. The woman who'd helped him destroy my daughter. The hearing was set for late September. Christine called me the night before, her voice so small I almost didn't recognize it. "Mom, what if I lose him?" I didn't have an answer. The hearing was brutal. Derek's lawyer brought up every late rent payment Christine had made in the past year, every sick day she'd taken, every instance where Nathan had mentioned being at my house. They made it sound like Christine was neglecting her son, like I was some overbearing matriarch controlling her life. Christine's lawyer did her best, but we were losing. I could feel it. And then, at the end, Derek took the stand. He talked about how hard he'd worked to support his family, how he tried to make his marriage work, how Christine had pushed him away with her constant stress and complaints. He talked about Monica like she was some kind of savior, this wonderful woman who'd helped him see that he deserved happiness too. He didn't mention that I'd given him a job, that I'd loaned him money, that I'd paid for his son's daycare and his wife's medical bills and his car repairs. He didn't mention any of it. And when Christine's lawyer asked him directly if he felt any responsibility for the breakdown of his marriage, he looked right at me and said, "The only mistake I made was letting my mother-in-law convince me I owed her something." The judge didn't rule that day. She said she needed time to review everything, and we'd hear her decision in 2 weeks. We left the courthouse in silence. Christine was shaking so hard I had to hold her up as we walked to the car. I drove her home, got her into bed, sat with Nathan while he played with his trucks in the living room. He looked up at me with those big brown eyes, so much like Christine's, and asked, "Is Daddy going to take me away?" I didn't know what to say. So I just hugged him and told him I loved him. That night, I went home to my apartment, a small 2-bedroom place I'd lived in for 15 years, and I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and a stack of bills I couldn't pay. My business was dying. My daughter was broken. My grandson's life was being torn apart. And Derek Walsh, the man I'd helped, the man I'd trusted, was winning. I thought about calling him. I thought about begging him to drop the custody fight, to let Christine keep Nathan, to just leave us alone. But I knew it wouldn't matter. He didn't care. He'd never cared. I finished the wine. Then I poured another glass. And I started thinking about what happens when you run out of options. If you've stayed with me this far, leave a comment and let me know, because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. And check the description box below if you want more stories about people who refused to give up when the world turned its back on them. The judge's ruling came down on a Friday afternoon in late September, delivered via email to Christine's lawyer, who called us immediately. Primary custody to Derek Walsh. Christine would get Nathan every other weekend and 1 weeknight per week. The reasoning was cold, clinical, and devastating. Derek had demonstrated financial stability, a supportive partnership with Monica, and a home environment the court deemed more consistent and structured. Christine's mental health struggles, her reduced work hours, and her financial dependence on me were all cited as factors. They'd taken my grandson away from his mother. Christine didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat on her couch, staring at nothing, and after about 10 minutes, she looked at me and said, "I can't do this anymore." I didn't know what she meant. Not then. I tried to rally. I told her we'd appeal. I told her we'd fight harder, get a better lawyer, prove that Derek was a liar and a manipulator and that Monica was complicit in all of it. I told her we'd win. But even as I said it, I knew it was hollow. We didn't have the money for an appeal. I was barely keeping my business alive. Christine was barely keeping herself alive. And Nathan was going to grow up thinking his mother had abandoned him. That weekend, Christine packed Nathan's things, his favorite stuffed elephant, his blankets, his clothes, and Derek came to pick him up with Monica in the passenger seat. Nathan cried so hard he threw up on the front steps. Derek carried him to the car anyway, saying soothing things I couldn't hear, and Monica didn't even look at us. Christine stood in the doorway, frozen, until the car disappeared around the corner. Then she went inside and locked herself in her bedroom for 2 days. I stayed with her. I brought her water, soup, anything I could think of. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't talk. On the third day, I called her supervisor at the hospital, begging them to give her more time, and they told me they'd already filled her position. Christine had lost her job. I felt the walls closing in, but I couldn't let her see me panic. I called in every favor I had, reached out to old contacts, tried to drum up new business for my company. I got a few small contracts, nothing substantial. It was like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon. By mid-October, I'd drained my savings completely. I took out a second line of credit, this one against my apartment. My credit card balances climbed. I stopped answering calls from creditors. And then, on a Tuesday morning in late October, I got the email from my landlord. Not my personal landlord. The landlord who owned the building where my office was located. I was 3 months behind on rent. They were terminating my lease. I had 30 days to vacate. I read the email 3 times, sitting in my empty office, surrounded by filing cabinets and desks and the peeling motivational poster I'd hung on the wall 20 years ago that said, "Success is built one day at a time." I'd built this business from nothing. I'd worked 70-hour weeks, missed holidays, sacrificed relationships. I'd survived the 2008 recession, bad tenants, nightmare clients, every challenge the industry could throw at me. And now it was over. I closed my laptop. I looked around the office one last time. Then I started packing. It took me 4 days to box everything up. My 2 remaining employees helped, both of them crying, both of them apologizing like it was their fault. I paid them their final checks with money I didn't have and told them I'd give them good references. On the last day, I sat alone in the empty office, the walls bare, the carpet stained from years of foot traffic, and I thought about calling Derek. I wanted to tell him what he'd done. I wanted to scream at him, to make him understand the damage he'd caused, the lives he'd destroyed. But I didn't call. Because I knew he wouldn't care. I closed the door behind me, dropped the keys in the landlord's mailbox, and drove home. That night, Christine called me. Her voice was flat, emotionless, and it scared me more than her crying ever had. "I saw Nathan today," she said. "Derek let me come by to drop off some of his things." Monica answered the door. She was wearing an apron. She called Nathan sweetie like she had any right to use that word. And he smiled at her, "Mom." He smiled at her like she was replacing me. "Christine. I can't do this," she said again. "I can't watch him forget me." "He won't forget you. You're his mother." "I'm nothing," she whispered. "I'm a woman who lost her son because I wasn't strong enough to keep my husband happy. Because I wasn't enough." "That's not true." She hung up. I called her back. It went to voicemail. I called again. And again. Finally, around midnight, she answered. "I'm okay," she said, but she didn't sound okay. "I'm going to bed. I'll talk to you tomorrow." "I love you," I said. "I know." She hung up, and I sat there in my apartment, staring at my phone, feeling more helpless than I'd ever felt in my life. The next week was a haze. I moved what was left of my business into my apartment, fielding angry calls from property owners and creditors. I applied for jobs, assistant positions, clerical work, anything, but no one wanted to hire a 63-year-old woman whose business had just collapsed. Christine stopped answering my calls. When I drove to her house, she wouldn't answer the door. On a Thursday in early November, I got a call from Derek. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "What do you want?" I asked. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was calm, controlled. "About Christine." "What about her?" "She's not doing well, Beverly. Nathan told me she showed up at his school yesterday, crying, trying to take him home early. The school called me. I had to explain to my son why his mother is acting like this." My hands tightened around the phone. "She's not acting like anything. She's heartbroken. You did this to her." "I didn't do anything except stop letting her control my life. And I'm not going to let her control Nathan's life either. If she keeps showing up like this, if she keeps making scenes, I'm going to file for a restraining order." "You wouldn't." "Try me." He hung up. I sat there, shaking with rage, and I realized that Derek wasn't just winning. He was erasing us. Christine. Me. Everything we'd been to Nathan. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. That night, I went to Christine's house again. This time, she answered the door. She looked thinner, paler, her eyes hollow and red-rimmed. I heard about the school, I said gently. Christine, you can't. I know, she said. I know, Mom. I saw him on the playground, and I thought if I could just talk to him, if I could just hold him for a minute, maybe I'd remember what it felt like to be his mother. You are his mother. Then why did they take him away? I didn't have an answer. She invited me in, and we sat in her living room, the same room where Nathan used to build block towers and watch cartoons. It was too quiet now. Too empty. I need to tell you something, Christine said after a long silence. Okay. I'm losing the house. I stared at her. What? I can't make the mortgage payments. I'm 3 months behind. The bank sent me a foreclosure notice. Christine, why didn't you tell me? Because you've already given me everything, Mom. I can't ask you for more. You're not asking. I'm offering. With what? She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw anger in her eyes. You don't have anything left. I know you lost the office. I know you're drowning too. So don't sit here and pretend you can save me, because you can't. Her words hit harder than I expected, maybe because they were true. We sat in silence for a while, and then Christine said, I think I'm going to move. Maybe go stay with Aunt Linda in Virginia for a while. Just get away from here. What about Nathan? What about him? I barely see him anyway. Her voice cracked. Maybe it's better if I just go. Maybe he'll be happier if he doesn't have to watch me fall apart. Christine, don't say that. I'm tired, Mom. I'm so tired. I stayed with her that night, sleeping on her couch, listening to her cry through the bedroom wall. The next morning, I went home, and I made a decision. I was going to talk to Derek. Face to face. I was going to beg him, if that's what it took. I was going to ask him to drop the custody fight, to let Christine see Nathan more, to just give us some breathing room. I drove to his apartment, the one he shared with Monica. It was a grey, ugly building with peeling paint and a parking lot full of potholes. I knocked on the door. Monica answered. She looked different than I remembered. Older. Tired. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked like someone who'd realized too late that the prize she'd won wasn't worth the cost. Beverly, she said quietly. I need to talk to Derek. She hesitated, then opened the door wider. He's in the living room. I walked past her, and there he was, sitting on a sagging couch with a beer in his hand, watching television. He didn't look up when I came in. We need to talk, I said. No, we don't. Derek, please. Christine is falling apart. Nathan needs his mother. You have to. He finally looked at me, and the expression on his face stopped me cold. It wasn't anger. It was contempt. You want me to feel sorry for Christine, he said. You want me to feel guilty? After everything she put me through? After you spent years making me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I owed you for every little thing you did for us? I never. You did, he said. Every time you wrote a check, every time you showed up uninvited, every time you looked at me like I was some kind of charity case. You made me feel like nothing. And Christine let you. So no, Beverly, I'm not going to make this easier for you. You want Nathan to see his mother more? Tell her to get her shit together. Tell her to stop crying and showing up at his school and acting like a crazy person. She's not crazy. She's heartbroken. Because of you. Because of me. He stood up, his face flushing red. I'm not the one who made this a war, Beverly. You did. You fired Monica. You turned Christine against me. You tried to destroy my life because I didn't want to play happy family anymore. So you know what? Fuck you. Fuck your guilt trips and your martyr act. You lost. Deal with it. I felt something inside me shatter. Not break, shatter. Into 1,000 tiny pieces that I knew I'd never put back together. You're a coward, I said quietly. You're a selfish, cruel coward, and one day, Nathan is going to see exactly who you are. Derek smiled. It was the ugliest smile I'd ever seen. Maybe, he said. But by then, he won't even remember you. I turned and walked out. Monica was standing in the hallway, her eyes wet, her mouth half open like she wanted to say something. I didn't give her the chance. I got in my car and drove, not sure where I was going, not sure what I was going to do. I ended up at Christine's house, but she didn't answer the door. So I went home. And that's when everything fell apart for good. That night, I got an email from my landlord. I was being evicted. I had 30 days to vacate my apartment. I'd missed 3 months of rent. I'd been using my rent money to pay Christine's legal bills, to keep food in her fridge, to keep my business limping along for as long as I could. And now I had nowhere to go. I sat on my couch, surrounded by boxes I hadn't unpacked from the office, and I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because I couldn't cry anymore. I'd lost everything. My business. My savings. My home. And my family was gone too. If you've ever felt like you've hit rock bottom, like there's nowhere left to fall, then you know exactly where I was in that moment. Drop a comment and let me know if you've ever had to start over from nothing, because I promise you, this story is about to take a turn. Check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about survival, about fighting back, about refusing to let the people who hurt you have the last word. I moved into the motel on November 18th. It was called the Silver Rest Inn, though there was nothing restful about it, and I'm pretty sure the only silver involved was the duct tape holding the vacancy sign together. It sat on the outskirts of Columbus, right off Route 33, wedged between a truck stop and an abandoned gas station. The kind of place where you paid by the week in cash and nobody asked your name. $32 a night. $224 a week. I had $1,100 left to my name. The room smelled like cigarettes and mildew, with a bed that sagged in the middle and a bathroom where the shower only produced lukewarm water that trickled out in a sad drizzle. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners, and there was a permanent stain on the carpet near the door that I tried not to look at too closely. I unpacked my suitcase, one suitcase, because that's all I'd been able to fit in my car along with the boxes from my office, and I sat on the edge of that sagging bed and stared at the wall. This was my life now. 63 years old, living in a motel, with a business that no longer existed and a family that was scattered to the wind. Christine had stopped answering my calls entirely. I'd driven by her house twice, but her car was never there, and I didn't know if she'd already left for Virginia or if she was just avoiding me. I thought about calling her friend Rachel, asking if she'd heard from her, but I couldn't bring myself to admit how bad things had gotten. Nathan was with Derek and Monica. Full-time now, since Christine's visitation had been reduced even further after the school incident. I hadn't seen him in 3 weeks. I didn't even know if he asked about me anymore. I spent the first few days in that motel room applying for jobs online, using the free Wi-Fi from the diner across the street. I applied to everything: administrative assistant positions, retail jobs, even a night shift stocking position at a grocery store. Most places didn't respond. The ones that did took one look at my age and my work history and politely told me I was overqualified. I knew what that meant. It meant they didn't want to hire someone who'd owned her own business, someone who might expect too much or not stick around. It meant I was too old. By the end of the first week, I'd burned through $400 on motel rent and food. I was eating one meal a day, usually fast food dollar menus or canned soup heated up in the microwave in the motel office that the manager let guests use. I'd lost weight. My clothes hung off me. When I looked in the bathroom mirror, which I tried not to do, I saw a woman I didn't recognize. Grey hair I hadn't bothered to dye in months. Lines around my mouth that seemed to have appeared overnight. Eyes that looked exhausted and empty. I looked like my mother had in her final years, after the cleaning jobs had dried up and she'd spent her last days in a state-run nursing home, staring out the window at nothing. I'd promised myself I'd never end up like her. And here I was. On my 8th day in the motel, I got a call from Christine's lawyer. My stomach dropped when I saw the number, thinking something had happened, that maybe the custody situation had gotten worse somehow. But it wasn't about Nathan. "Beverly, I need to talk to you about the outstanding balance on Christine's case," she said, her voice professionally sympathetic but firm. "You're currently 3 months behind on payments, and I've been patient, but I can't continue to carry this balance. I need at least a partial payment, or I'm going to have to withdraw as her attorney." I looked around my motel room, at the $1,100 I had left, at the stained carpet and peeling wallpaper. "How much do I owe?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be more than I had. $8,200. I closed my eyes. "I don't have it." "I understand you're going through a difficult time." "I don't have it," I repeated. "I'm living in a motel. I lost my business. I lost my apartment. I have $1,100 in my bank account, and that has to last me until I find a job, which might be never because apparently 63 is too old to work anywhere. There was a long silence. I'm sorry, she finally said. I really am. But I can't work for free. I know. If you can't make a payment in the next 2 weeks, I'll have to file a motion to withdraw from the case. Okay. She hesitated. For what it's worth, Beverly, you're a good mother. A good grandmother. I hope things turn around for you. She hung up, and I sat there holding my phone, feeling the last thread of hope snap. Christine was on her own now. I couldn't help her anymore. I couldn't help anyone. That night, I walked to the diner across the street and ordered coffee. Just coffee, because it was $1 and they let you refill it for free. I sat in a corner booth and watched trucks pull in and out of the stop next door, drivers coming and going, everyone on their way to somewhere else. I thought about calling Derek. Not to beg. Not to ask for anything. Just to tell him he'd won. To tell him I hoped he was happy, that I hoped destroying my daughter and taking my grandson was worth it. But I didn't call. Because giving him that satisfaction would have been the final defeat. Instead, I went back to my motel room, and I lay on that sagging bed, and I stared at the water-stained ceiling, and I thought about what comes after you've lost everything. I thought about my mother, about how she'd given up at the end, how she'd stopped fighting because she was too tired and too broken. I thought about Christine, about whether she'd already left for Virginia or if she was sitting in that empty house right now, thinking the same dark thoughts I was thinking. And I thought about Nathan, about his little face, about the way he used to run to me when I picked him up from preschool, his arms outstretched, yelling "Grandma," like I was the best thing in his world. I wondered if he even remembered my name now. The next morning, I woke up to someone pounding on my door. I stumbled out of bed, disoriented, and opened it to find the motel manager standing there. A short, heavy-set man named Ray with a gray beard and tired eyes. "Rent's due today," he said. "You paid through yesterday." I glanced at the clock. It was barely 7 in the morning. "I know," I said. "I'll have it for you this afternoon." He looked past me into the room, at the unmade bed and the suitcase in the corner, and something in his expression softened slightly. "Look, I don't want to be a jerk about this, but I got bills too. If you can't pay, I gotta rent the room to someone who can." "I can pay," I said. "I just need a few hours." He nodded slowly. "Okay. But I need it by 3. After that, I gotta charge a late fee." "I'll have it." He left, and I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. $224. I had $1,100. That left $876. For another week. And then what? I forced myself to get dressed, to brush my teeth in the tiny bathroom with water that smelled faintly of sulfur. I grabbed my purse and walked across the street to the diner, ordered another $1 coffee, and opened my laptop. I had 17 unread emails. 14 were automated rejection letters from jobs I'd applied to. 1 was a promotional email from a grocery store. 1 was from my credit card company, reminding me that I was 30 days past due. And 1 was from Christine. My hands shook as I opened it. "Mom. I'm sorry I haven't called. I can't talk right now. I'm not doing well, and I don't want you to see me like this. I'm leaving for Virginia tomorrow. I need to get away from here, from all of it. I know you'll worry, but please don't. I just need time. I love you. Thank you for everything you tried to do. I'm sorry it wasn't enough. See." I read it 3 times, looking for something between the lines, some hidden message that would tell me she was okay. But all I saw was goodbye. I closed my laptop and sat there, staring at my coffee, feeling the weight of every decision I'd made over the past year pressing down on me. I'd given Christine everything. I'd bankrupted myself trying to save her, trying to keep Nathan in her life, trying to fight Derek. And I'd lost anyway. I paid Ray his $224 at 2:30 that afternoon, counting out cash from my wallet while he watched with a mixture of pity and relief. "You doing okay?" he asked as he pocketed the money. "Fine," I lied. "You need anything, you let me know. I don't have much, but I keep coffee in the office and sometimes there's leftover donuts from the morning crowd." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and went back to my room. $676 left. 3 more weeks if I was lucky. I spent the rest of that week in a fog, applying to more jobs, getting more rejections, eating less, sleeping too much. Time felt strange, like I was moving through water. The motel room became both a prison and a sanctuary, the only place I didn't have to pretend I was okay. On the Friday of my second week there, I decided to clean. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was the desperation to feel like I had control over something, anything. Maybe it was just the need to move, to do something other than sit on that bed and wait for the money to run out. I started with the small closet near the bathroom, the one I'd shoved my suitcase into without really looking. I pulled it out, thinking I'd reorganize my clothes, maybe see if there was anything I could sell. That's when I noticed the shelf above the closet rod. It was high up, almost at ceiling level, and in the dim light, I hadn't seen it before. There was something up there, a shape, a shadow, something pushed far back into the corner. I stood on the wobbly desk chair and reached up, my fingers brushing against fabric. I pulled it down. It was an old duffel bag, dusty and worn, the kind with a long shoulder strap and military-style buckles. It was heavier than I expected. I set it on the bed and stared at it for a long moment, confused. Had the previous tenant left it? Had Ray forgotten to clear out the room completely? I almost didn't open it. Almost took it to Ray and said, "Hey, someone left this here." But something made me hesitate. I unzipped it slowly, and my entire world stopped. Inside were stacks of cash. Bundles of $100 bills, held together with rubber bands, packed so tightly that they filled the entire bag. I stopped breathing. I pulled out one stack with trembling hands. It was thick, crisp bills, 100 of them. $10,000 in my hand. I counted the stacks. 10 of them. $100,000. I sat there on the edge of the bed, holding $100,000 in cash, in a motel room that cost $32 a night, and I felt like I was dreaming. Or hallucinating. Or losing my mind. I checked the bag again, frantically now, looking for something, a note, an ID, anything that would explain where this came from, who it belonged to. There was nothing. Just cash. And then I saw it, tucked into a side pocket I'd missed at first. A small envelope, yellowed with age, with one word written on the front in shaky handwriting. Beverly. My hands shook so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a single piece of paper, a letter written in the same shaky hand. I recognized the handwriting immediately, even though I hadn't seen it in almost 15 years. It was my mother's. My dearest Beverly. If you're reading this, then you found what I left for you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you about it before I died. I'm sorry for a lot of things. This money, I know it's a shock. I know you'll have questions. The truth is, I didn't clean houses my whole life. For the last 20 years, I did something else. Something I'm not proud of, but something that kept us fed and kept you in school. I worked for a man named Vincent Calloway. I kept his books, managed his accounts, stayed quiet about things I shouldn't have seen. He wasn't a good man, Beverly. But he paid well, and he kept his word. When I got sick, when I knew I was dying, I told him I wanted out. I wanted to leave you something real, something that would keep you safe when I was gone. He gave me this. Cash. Clean. Untraceable. He said it was payment for 20 years of loyalty, 20 years of silence. I hid it because I didn't know how to give it to you. I didn't know how to explain where it came from without you hating me for the choices I made. So I kept it hidden, and I told myself I'd find the right time to tell you. But I never did. I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you deserved. I'm sorry I kept secrets. But this money is yours now. Use it. Don't ask questions. Don't look back. Be better than I was. I love you. Mom. I read the letter 3 times. 4 times. 5. I thought about my mother, about the way she'd worked herself to exhaustion, about the way she'd always had just enough money to get by but never more. I thought about the times she'd come home late, her hands shaking, her eyes distant. I thought about Vincent Calloway, a name I vaguely remembered from news reports years ago, something about organized crime, about investigations that went nowhere. I thought about my mother keeping his secrets, doing whatever she had to do to keep me fed and clothed and safe. And I thought about the fact that she died alone in that nursing home, holding on to this money, never telling me, maybe waiting for the right moment that never came. I sat there in that motel room, holding $100,000 and my mother's confession, and I didn't know whether to cry or laugh or scream. So I did all 3. And then, slowly, I started to think about what comes next. Because suddenly, impossibly, I had options again. And one of those options involved making sure Derek Walsh understood what it meant to underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. If you're still with me, if you want to know what I did with that money, drop a comment right now and let me know where you're watching from. Because this story is about to shift into something I never saw coming. And check that description box below. There are more stories just like this one waiting for you. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the motel bed with the duffel bag beside me, the letter from my mother in my lap, and I stared at the wall until the sun came up. $100,000. Money my mother had earned working for a criminal. Money she'd hidden away for 15 years. Money that was supposed to save me. And maybe it would. But not in the way she'd imagined. I thought about going to the police, about turning the money in, doing the right thing. But the right thing had gotten me nowhere. The right thing had cost me my business, my home, my family. The right thing had left me living in a motel with $600 to my name. And besides, my mother's letter had been clear. This money was clean. Untraceable. A ghost. Vincent Calloway was dead. I remembered reading about it in the paper years ago, some kind of heart attack, his empire crumbling shortly after. There was no one to connect this money to. No one who would come looking for it. It was mine. The question was, what was I going to do with it? I could use it to survive. Pay for the motel for months, maybe a year. Find a cheap apartment. Buy groceries that weren't from the dollar menu. Live quietly, carefully, until I figured out what came next. Or I could use it for something else. Something my mother would probably have told me not to do. Something that involved making Derek Walsh regret every single choice he'd made. I spent the next 3 days thinking it through. Planning. Researching. I didn't leave the motel except to walk to the diner for coffee and to use their Wi-Fi. Ray left me alone, probably assuming I'd paid my rent and wasn't causing trouble. I started with Derek's life. I knew where he lived, where he worked. He'd gotten a job at a property management firm downtown, one of my old competitors, almost certainly because he'd badmouthed me to everyone in the industry. I knew he was still with Monica, still playing house, still pretending he was father of the year. But I didn't know everything. So I started digging. I created a fake Facebook account, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Wheeler who worked in real estate. I sent friend requests to people in Derek's network, people who'd worked with him, people who knew him casually. I joined local Columbus groups, real estate forums, parenting pages. And I watched. Derek posted often. Pictures of Nathan at the park, at soccer practice, at Monica's daughter's birthday party. Captions about being blessed, about second chances, about how grateful he was for his beautiful family. He never mentioned Christine. He never mentioned me. It was like we'd never existed. I scrolled through Monica's page too. She posted less frequently, but when she did, it was always carefully curated. Perfect pictures of perfectly arranged meals. Nathan and her daughter playing together. Date nights with Derek. She looked happy. Or she looked like she wanted people to think she was happy. I dug deeper. I found Derek's LinkedIn page, saw that he'd been promoted quickly at his new firm, that he was managing high-end properties now. I found reviews online. Clients loved him, said he was professional, attentive, always available. He'd rebuilt his life. On the ashes of mine. And that's when I realized something. Derek's new life was built on lies. Lies about why he left his previous job. Lies about why his marriage ended. Lies about who he was. And lies can be exposed. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. I needed someone who understood investigations, who knew how to find information that people wanted hidden. I thought about hiring a private investigator, but that felt risky. Too many questions. Too much of a paper trail. And then I remembered someone. Janet Torres. Janet and I had worked together years ago, back when I was first starting my business. She'd been a tenant in one of my properties, a single mother going through a nasty divorce. Her ex-husband had been hiding assets, lying about his income to avoid paying child support. Janet had hired a lawyer, but the lawyer wasn't finding anything. So Janet had learned to do it herself. She'd taught herself skip tracing, asset searches, how to navigate public records and online databases. She'd found everything her ex had hidden, offshore accounts, property in his mother's name, a second business he'd never disclosed. She'd won her case and gotten full custody of her daughter. And after that, she'd started doing it for other people. Quietly, off the books. She never advertised, never had a website. You found Janet through word of mouth, And if she took your case, it meant she believed you deserved justice. I hadn't talked to her in almost 10 years, but I still had her number saved in an old contact list. I called her from my motel room, my heart pounding. She answered on the third ring. Hello. Janet. It's Beverly Hartman. I don't know if you remember me. Beverly. Of course I remember you. Her voice was warm, surprised. How are you? It's been forever. I almost lied. Almost said I was fine, that I was just calling to catch up. But I didn't have time for lies. I need help, I said. And I didn't know who else to call. There was a pause. What kind of help? I told her everything. About Derek and Christine, about losing Nathan, about my business collapsing and ending up in a motel. I told her about the custody battle, the affair, the way Derek had poisoned my reputation and destroyed my daughter's life. I didn't tell her about the money. Not yet. When I finished, Janet was quiet for a long moment. Jesus, Beverly, she finally said. I'm so sorry. That's a nightmare. I need to know everything about him, I said. I need to know if there's anything that I can use. Anything that proves he's not the perfect father he's pretending to be. What are you planning to do with that information? I hesitated. I don't know yet. But I need options. I need to stop feeling helpless. Another pause. This isn't going to be cheap. I have money, I said. How much do you need? For a full workup, background check, financial records, social media deep dive, surveillance if necessary? $5,000. Maybe more depending on what I find. $5,000. A week ago, that would have been impossible. Now it was a drop in the bucket. Can you start right away? I asked. Give me his full name, date of birth, last known address, and social security number if you have it. I have all of it. Then yeah, I can start today. I gave her the information, and we arranged for me to pay her half upfront, half when she delivered results. I told her I'd drop off the cash the next day. Beverly, she said before we hung up. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Men like Derek, they don't go down easy. And if he finds out you're digging into his life, he'll retaliate. Let him try, I said. I hung up and sat there in the motel room, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the desperate, fragile hope that things would magically get better, but the cold, focused hope that comes from having a plan. The next morning, I withdrew $5,000 from the duffel bag, $50 bills that I tucked into an envelope, and drove to Janet's office. She worked out of a small suite in a business complex on the north side of Columbus, the kind of place that rented spaces to accountants and insurance agents and people who needed an address that sounded more professional than their home. Janet looked older than I remembered, her dark hair streaked with gray, her face lined with the kind of weariness that comes from seeing too much of humanity's worst. But her eyes were sharp, assessing, and when she looked at me, I felt like she saw everything I wasn't saying. You look like hell, she said bluntly as she let me into her office. I'm living in a motel and eating one meal a day. What did you expect? She smiled faintly. Fair enough. Sit. I handed her the envelope. She opened it, counted the bills quickly, and tucked it into a desk drawer without comment. I started preliminary research last night, she said, pulling up a file on her computer. Derek Walsh. 37 years old. Born in Akron, moved to Columbus for college, dropped out after 2 years. Worked a series of sales jobs before marrying your daughter. No criminal record. Credit score is average. He's got some debt, mostly credit cards, but nothing extreme. On paper, he looks like a regular guy. What about off paper? That's what I'm going to find out. She turned the monitor toward me. But I need you to be honest with me, Beverly. What do you want from this? Are you looking for dirt to use in a custody case? Because if you are, I need to know upfront so I can make sure everything I find is admissible. I don't know, I admitted. I need to know who he really is. I need to know if there's something, anything, that proves he's not the person he's pretending to be. Janet studied me for a long moment. You're not planning to hurt him, are you? No. I'm not violent. Good. Because I don't help people commit crimes. She paused. But I'm very good at finding truths that people want hidden. And once you know those truths, what you do with them is your business. How long will this take? Give me 2 weeks. Maybe 3. I'll check in with you as I find things. I nodded and stood to leave. Beverly, Janet said as I reached the door. Whatever happened to you, whatever he did, you didn't deserve it. I hope you know that. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let myself cry. Thank you. I went back to the motel, back to that sagging bed and stained carpet, and I waited. And for the first time in months, the waiting didn't feel hopeless. It felt like the calm before the storm. Janet called me 4 days later. I found something, she said without preamble. Can you come to my office? I was there in 20 minutes. She had papers spread across her desk, a laptop open, and an expression that told me she'd found more than just something. Sit, she said, and I did. Derek Walsh is not who he says he is, she began. Or rather, he's exactly who he says he is now, but that's not who he was 5 years ago. What does that mean? She slid a printout across the desk. It was a credit report, but the name at the top wasn't Derek Walsh. It was Derek William Walsh Martinez. He changed his name, Janet said. Legally, about 8 years ago, right before he married your daughter. Dropped the Martinez entirely, shortened it to just Derek Walsh. I stared at the paper. Why would he do that? I'm getting to that. She pulled up another document. Derek Martinez, that's the name he was born with, had a rough early 20s. He racked up about $40,000 in debt between credit cards, personal loans, and a car he defaulted on. He also had 2 evictions in Akron and Cleveland, both for non-payment of rent. So he was financially irresponsible. That doesn't. There's more. Janet's voice was grim. In 2012, Derek Martinez was charged with fraud. He was working for a real estate investment company, and he was caught forging documents to secure loans for properties that didn't exist. The company fired him, pressed charges, and he ended up pleading guilty to a reduced charge, falsifying business records. He got probation, community service, and his record was sealed after he completed the terms. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. He's a convicted criminal. Technically yes, but because the record was sealed and he changed his name, it doesn't show up on standard background checks. You have to dig deep to find it. And I'm guessing your daughter never knew. She didn't. I didn't. How did he hide this? Janet leaned back in her chair. People reinvent themselves all the time. He changed his name, moved to a new city, started over. As long as he stayed clean and didn't apply for jobs that required intense vetting, no one would ever know. I thought about the man I'd hired, the man I'd trusted with my business, the man who'd married my daughter. A fraud. Literally. There's more, Janet continued. I pulled his financial records for the past 3 years. On paper, he's doing okay. Making about $70,000 a year at his new job, managing his bills. But there are some irregularities. Like what? Like monthly cash deposits that don't match his salary. About $2,000 a month, every month, going back almost a year. They're always just under the reporting threshold, which suggests he's trying to stay under the radar. Where's the money coming from? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. She showed me more, social media activity, reviews from clients, property records. On the surface, Derek looked clean, successful, stable. But underneath, there were cracks. Here's what I think, Janet said, closing her laptop. Derek Walsh is a con artist. Maybe not actively right now, but he's done it before, and people like that don't change. They just get better at hiding. These cash deposits, the way he's carefully managing his image, the way he cut ties with anyone who knew him before, he's building a new identity. And I'm guessing there's something he's hiding. Can you find out what it is? I'm working on it. But Beverly, you need to understand something. If Derek finds out someone's digging into his past, if he gets even a hint that you're behind it, he's going to lawyer up. And if he's as smart as I think he is, he'll make your life hell. He's already made my life hell. It can always get worse. I looked at the papers on her desk, at the evidence of Derek's lies, and I felt that cold anger settle deeper into my bones. Keep digging, I said. I'll pay whatever it takes. Janet nodded. Give me another week. I left her office and drove back to the motel, my mind racing. Derek was a fraud. He'd lied about his past, changed his name, hidden a criminal record. And now he was lying about who he was, building a perfect life on a foundation of deception. And somewhere in that deception, there had to be something I could use. That night, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I drove to Derek's apartment. I didn't plan to confront him. I didn't even plan to let him see me. I just needed to see him, to see Monica, to see the life they were living while my daughter fell apart. I parked across the street, in the shadows where my car wouldn't be noticed, and I waited. Around 7, the door opened, and Derek came out with Nathan. My grandson. He'd grown. Even from a distance, I could see it. He was taller, his hair a little longer, and he was wearing a jacket I didn't recognize. Derek was talking to him, animated, smiling, and Nathan was laughing. My chest felt like it was caving in. They got into Derek's car and drove off, probably heading to dinner or a movie or some other normal father-son activity that I'd been cut out of. I sat there for a long time after they left, staring at the apartment, and I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about Nathan. About making sure he grew up knowing the truth about his father. About making sure Derek didn't get to rewrite history and pretend he was something he wasn't. If you've ever been cut out of someone's life, if you've ever watched from the outside while someone else took your place, you know exactly how I felt in that moment. Drop a comment below and tell me about it, because I need to know I'm not alone in this. And check the description box, there are more stories like this, stories about people who refuse to disappear quietly. I drove back to the motel, and I made a decision. Whatever Janet found, whatever evidence she uncovered, I was going to use it. Not just to hurt Derek, but to protect Nathan. Because my grandson deserved better than a father who lied about everything. And I was going to make sure he got it. Janet called me 11 days later, and the first thing she said was, "You need to sit down." I was already sitting, perched on the edge of the motel bed, but I gripped the phone tighter. "What did you find?" "Derek's been running a scam," she said. "A careful one, but a scam nonetheless." My heart started pounding. "Tell me." "Remember those cash deposits I mentioned? I traced them. They're coming from elderly tenants in the properties he manages. He's been taking side payments, cash rent, security deposits, maintenance fees, and pocketing them instead of reporting them to his company." "How much?" "Conservatively, about $50,000 over the past year. Maybe more." I felt the air leave my lungs. "That's embezzlement." "Yes. And here's the kicker, he's doing it to tenants who are unlikely to report it. Elderly people, immigrants, people who don't understand their rights or who are afraid of making waves. He tells them to pay him directly in cash, says it's easier, that he'll make sure the rent gets to the right place. But it never does." "How do you know this?" "I interviewed 3 tenants. Pretended I was doing a survey for the property management company. They all told the same story. They pay Derek directly, in cash, every month. They don't get receipts. And when I checked with the actual company, those payments aren't showing up in their system." I thought about the man I'd hired, the man I'd trusted with my tenants, and I felt sick. "There's more," Janet continued. "I found Monica Brennan's financial records. She's been receiving deposits too, smaller amounts, about $500 a month. Looks like Derek's cutting her in on the scam." "So she knows. She's complicit." "Definitely." I closed my eyes, thinking about the woman I'd hired, the woman I'd helped, the woman who'd stood in my office with tears in her eyes and let me believe she was a victim. She'd been playing me from the start. "What else?" I asked, because I could tell Janet wasn't finished. "I ran a background check on Monica. She lied on her job application. She told you she was a paralegal, right?" "Yes." "She wasn't. She worked as a receptionist at a law firm for 6 months before she was fired for stealing petty cash from the office. And her ex-husband? He's not missing. He's living in Florida with full custody of their daughter." I felt the room tilt. "What?" "Monica gave up custody voluntarily. Her ex got a restraining order against her for erratic behavior, showing up at his work, harassing his girlfriend, threatening to hurt herself if he didn't take her back. She's been telling people he abandoned her, but it's the other way around." "Why would she lie about that?" "Because it makes her look sympathetic. She's a victim. A single mother struggling against a cruel ex. It's a good story. And it worked on you." I sat there, trying to process it all. Derek and Monica weren't just cheaters. They were con artists, grifters, liars who'd built their entire relationship on deception. And they'd used me to do it. What do I do with this? I asked quietly. That's up to you, Janet said. You could report him to his company. They'd fire him, probably press charges. You could report him to the police, though that would take longer and they might not prioritize it. Or you could use it as leverage. Make him drop the custody fight. Make him give Nathan back to Christine. I thought about Christine, about the broken woman who'd left for Virginia because she couldn't stand to watch her son forget her. I thought about Nathan, about the life he was living with a father who was a criminal and a woman who was a liar. And I thought about myself, about what I wanted from this. Did I want justice? Or did I want revenge? I need to think about it, I said. Don't take too long, Janet warned. If Derek catches wind that someone's onto him, he'll cover his tracks. And men like him, when they're cornered, they get dangerous. I'll be careful. Beverly, whatever you decide, make sure it's worth it. She hung up, and I sat there in the motel room, staring at the duffel bag in the corner, at my mother's letter on the nightstand. I thought about what she'd written. Don't look back. Be better than I was. But what did better mean? Did it mean letting Derek and Monica get away with this? Did it mean taking the high road while they destroyed more lives? Or did it mean making sure they paid for what they'd done? I spent the next 2 days wrestling with the decision. I could report Derek to his company, to the police. I could expose him, ruin him the way he'd ruined me. But that felt too easy, too clean. Because Derek would just find another job, another city, another identity. He'd done it before. He'd do it again. And Monica would disappear too, probably move on to the next man she could manipulate, the next woman she could betray. No. Reporting them wasn't enough. I needed them to understand what they'd taken from me. From Christine. From Nathan. I needed them to feel it. On the 3rd day, I made my decision. I was going to give Derek a choice. I spent hours drafting the message, writing and rewriting it until every word was perfect. Then I created a new email address, one that couldn't be traced back to me, and I attached copies of everything Janet had found. The cash deposits. The tenant statements. Monica's background check. The sealed criminal record from 2012. And I wrote, Derek, I know what you've been doing. I know about the money you've been stealing from tenants. I know about Monica's lies. I know about your past, about Derek Martinez, about the fraud conviction you thought you could hide by changing your name. I have evidence of everything. Statements from tenants. Financial records. Documents that prove you've embezzled at least $50,000 from your employer. I'm giving you one chance to make this right. You will voluntarily give up primary custody of Nathan. You will agree to supervised visitation only, and you will not contest Christine's custody in any way. You will draft a statement admitting that you misled the court about Christine's fitness as a mother, and you will file it with the judge. You will do this within 7 days. If you do not, I will send everything I have to your employer, to the police, and to the local news. Your career will be over. You will face criminal charges. And Nathan will grow up knowing exactly who his father really is. Your choice. I read it 10 times before I sent it, my finger hovering over the button. This was it. The moment where I stopped being the victim and became something else. I hit send. And then I waited. Derek didn't respond for 3 days. 3 days of sitting in that motel room, checking my email every 10 minutes, barely eating, barely sleeping. I started to think he'd ignored me, that maybe he didn't believe I had the evidence, that maybe he was calling my bluff. But on the 4th day, I got a response. It was short. 5 words. Who the fuck is this? I smiled. He was rattled. I replied. Someone who knows the truth. You have 3 days left. Another day passed. Then another email. You're bluffing. You don't have shit. I sent him a single document. One tenant statement, with the tenant's name redacted but with enough detail to prove it was real. His response came within an hour. What do you want? I sent him the terms again. Custody. Supervised visitation. A statement to the court. This time, his response took longer. Almost a full day. I can't do that. Christine is unstable. She can't take care of Nathan. I felt the anger flare, white-hot and immediate. I wrote back. Christine is struggling because you destroyed her. You cheated on her with my employee. You took her son. You poisoned her reputation. And now you're stealing from vulnerable people to bankroll your fake perfect life with a woman who's as much of a liar as you are. You have 2 days. After that, I go public with everything. And trust me, Derek, I have nothing left to lose. You do. Silence. For an entire day, nothing. I started to think he was going to ignore me, that he'd decided to call my bluff after all. But then, on the 6th day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Beverly. It was Derek's voice, cold and hard. How did you get this number? I asked. Don't play dumb. I know it's you. Who else would have access to this shit? Who else would care? Does it matter? You're making a mistake, he said. You think you can threaten me? You think you can blackmail me into giving up my son? He's not your son. He's Christine's son. You're just the man who destroyed her to get him. Christine is a wreck. She can barely take care of herself, let alone a 4-year-old. I'm giving Nathan stability. A real home. A real family. A real family, I repeated. With a woman who abandoned her own daughter. With a man who's embezzling from elderly tenants. You can't prove any of that. I can. I have tenant statements. I have financial records. I have your sealed criminal record from 2012, Derek Martinez. And I will use all of it. There was a long silence. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel the rage radiating through the phone. What do you want? He finally asked, his voice low. I already told you. Give Nathan back to Christine. Drop the custody fight. Admit you lied to the court. And if I do that, you'll what? Disappear? Leave us alone. I'll keep the evidence to myself. As long as you stay away from my daughter and my grandson. And if I don't? Then you'll lose everything. Your job. Your freedom. Your perfect little life with Monica. All of it. Another silence. You're a bitter old bitch, he said quietly. You know that. You can't stand the fact that I moved on. That I'm happy. That I don't need you or Christine anymore. You were never happy, Derek. You're a con artist. You've been playing a role your entire life, and you're terrified someone's going to see through it. Fuck you. He hung up. I sat there, staring at my phone, my hands shaking. I'd backed him into a corner. And Janet was right. Cornered men were dangerous. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. The next day, the 7th day, the deadline, I woke up to an email. It was from Derek's lawyer. My client has reviewed your demands and finds them to be baseless and harassing in nature. We will not be responding to threats or blackmail. Any further contact will be considered criminal harassment and will be reported to the authorities. Furthermore, my client intends to seek a restraining order against Beverly Hartman for stalking and harassment, and will be filing a motion to have Ms. Hartman's contact with the minor child Nathan Walsh permanently restricted. I stared at the email, feeling my stomach drop. He was turning it around on me. He was going to use my threats against me, paint me as unstable, dangerous, and have me completely cut out of Nathan's life. I'd pushed too hard. I'd underestimated him. And now I was going to lose everything all over again. I sat there on the edge of the bed, my heart pounding, and I felt the walls closing in. I'd had one shot. One chance to use the evidence, to force Derek into a corner, to save my grandson. And I'd blown it. Unless. I picked up my phone and called Janet. She answered immediately. Beverly, what happened? He's calling my bluff. He's going to get a restraining order against me. He's going to paint me as crazy, and I'm going to lose access to Nathan completely. Did you threaten him? Yes. I sent him the evidence. I told him to drop the custody fight or I'd expose him. Janet swore softly. That was a mistake. Now he knows you're the one digging into him, and he's using it against you. What do I do? You go around him, she said. You can't threaten him anymore. That's just giving him ammunition. But you can still expose him. You just have to do it in a way that doesn't come back to you. How? Give me the evidence. Let me handle it. I'll send everything to his employer anonymously, to the police, to the tenants' rights organizations. By the time Derek figures out what's happening, it'll be too late for him to stop it. And what about the restraining order? Let him file it. You stay quiet. You don't contact him, you don't contact Monica, you stay completely out of sight. Once the evidence goes public, once Derek's facing criminal charges and has been fired, the custody arrangement will fall apart on its own. Christine will have grounds to file for emergency custody, and with Derek's criminal record exposed, no judge is going to give him primary custody. I thought about it, about stepping back, about letting someone else fight the battle. It felt like giving up. But maybe it was the smarter play. Okay, I said. Do it. Give me 24 hours, Janet said. And Beverly, stay low. Don't do anything that gives Derek more ammunition. I won't. I hung up, and I sat there in the motel room, feeling that cold anger settle into something else. Not rage. Not desperation. Just patience. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about the confrontation. It's about watching someone's carefully constructed life crumble from the shadows. And Derek Walsh's life was about to fall apart. If you're still watching, drop a comment and let me know what you think is going to happen next. Because trust me, this story is far from over. And don't forget to check that description box below for more stories about people who refused to stay silent when the world tried to bury them. Janet moved fast. Within 24 hours, she'd compiled everything into airtight packages and started distributing them through channels that couldn't be traced back to either of us. The first domino fell on a Monday morning. Derek's employer, Keystone Property Management, one of the largest firms in Columbus, received an anonymous email with detailed documentation of Derek's embezzlement scheme. Tenant statements. Bank records showing the cash deposits that never made it into company accounts. A forensic analysis of the discrepancies. By noon, Derek had been suspended pending an internal investigation. By 3 p.m., the company had contacted the police. I found out from Janet, who'd been monitoring the situation through her contacts in the industry. They're taking it seriously, she told me over the phone. Derek's been placed on administrative leave, and they've frozen his access to company accounts. The police are opening a fraud investigation. How long before they arrest him? Could be weeks. Could be months. These things move slowly, but the important thing is, it started. He can't stop it now. The second domino fell 2 days later. An anonymous tip was sent to Columbus's local NBC affiliate, the same one that had covered several tenant rights stories in the past. The package included everything about Derek's scam, along with interviews Janet had conducted with 3 elderly tenants who'd been paying him cash for months without knowing they were being defrauded. The news station ran the story that evening. I watched it from my motel room, sitting on the edge of the bed with my hands pressed to my mouth. The reporter stood outside Derek's apartment building, talking about allegations of widespread fraud and vulnerable seniors being exploited. They showed Derek's photo, the professional headshot from his company website, and they named him directly. Derek Walsh, a property manager with Keystone Property Management, is accused of embezzling tens of thousands of dollars from elderly tenants. They interviewed one of the tenants, an 82-year-old woman named Mrs. Chen who'd been paying Derek $3,000 a month in cash for almost a year. He seemed so nice, she said, her voice shaking. He told me it was easier to pay him directly. I trusted him. My chest felt tight watching her, thinking about how Derek had looked her in the eye and lied, just like he'd looked at me and Christine and lied. The reporter ended the segment by saying the police were investigating and that anyone who'd been a tenant in properties Derek managed should contact the fraud hotline. I turned off the television and sat in the silence, feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction. It was more like inevitability. Derek had built his life on lies, and now those lies were catching up with him. The third domino fell the next morning. Monica was fired from her job, a receptionist position at a dental office she'd started 3 months earlier. Apparently, someone had sent her employer an anonymous email detailing her history of theft and her involvement in Derek's fraud scheme. I didn't ask Janet if she'd been the one to send it. But I had my suspicions. By the end of the week, Derek and Monica's perfect life was in ruins. Derek had been officially terminated from Keystone Property Management. The company had issued a public statement distancing themselves from him and promising full cooperation with the police investigation. His face was all over the local news, and online forums were lit up with tenants sharing their own stories of suspicious cash payments and missing receipts. Monica had moved out of Derek's apartment, or he'd kicked her out, I wasn't sure which. Either way, their relationship hadn't survived the scrutiny. And then, on Friday afternoon, I got a call from Christine's old lawyer. Beverly, it's Amanda Weston. I need to talk to you about something. My heart started pounding. What is it? Christine contacted me. She saw the news about Derek. She wants to file for emergency custody of Nathan. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Is she okay? She's better. She came back from Virginia 2 days ago. She said seeing Derek on the news, seeing everything fall apart for him, it was like something woke up inside her. She's ready to fight again. Can she win? With Derek facing criminal charges and his entire life imploding? Absolutely. I'm filing the motion today. Given the circumstances, I think we can get a hearing within 2 weeks. What about the restraining order Derek threatened? He never filed it. I checked. He was bluffing, trying to scare you off. But it doesn't matter now. You're not part of the custody case anymore. This is between Christine and Derek. And Derek doesn't have a leg to stand on. I sat there, gripping the phone, trying to process what she was saying. Christine was fighting again. Nathan was coming home. Thank you, I whispered. Thank Christine. She's the one who found the courage to do this. After we hung up, I sat in the motel room and I cried. Not sad tears. Not angry tears. Relief. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. That night, Christine called me. Mom. Her voice was different. Stronger. More like the woman she'd been before Derek had broken her. Sweetheart, I said, my voice catching. I heard you're back. I saw the news. I saw what happened to Derek. Mom, was that you? I hesitated. What do you mean? I know you, Mom. I know you wouldn't just sit back and let him get away with everything. Did you? Did you have something to do with this? I thought about lying. But I was tired of lies. I had help, I admitted. I hired someone to investigate him. To find out the truth about who he really was. And when we found evidence that he was stealing from tenants, we made sure the right people saw it. There was a long silence. Thank you, Christine finally said, her voice breaking. Thank you for not giving up on me. For not giving up on Nathan. I would never give up on you, I said. Never. I'm going to get him back, Mom. Amanda thinks we have a good chance. And this time, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to let Derek take him from me again. I know you will. And I'll be there with you every step of the way. I love you. I love you too, baby. We talked for another hour, about her time in Virginia, about her plans to find a new job, about how she'd been seeing a therapist and working on herself. She sounded like Christine again. My daughter. The strong, brilliant woman I'd raised. And I realized that maybe, in some strange way, losing everything had forced us both to find something we'd lost along the way. Our fight. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In that time, Derek's world continued to collapse. The police investigation expanded. It turned out Derek had been running similar schemes at his previous jobs. Nothing anyone had caught, nothing documented. But once they started digging, patterns emerged. He was facing multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny. His lawyer tried to cut a deal, but the prosecutor wasn't interested. There were too many victims, too much evidence. Derek was looking at serious prison time. And his custody of Nathan? That evaporated the moment the charges were filed. The judge issued an emergency order transferring primary custody to Christine pending the outcome of Derek's criminal case. Derek was granted supervised visitation only, and only if he could find someone to supervise, which, given that Monica had abandoned him and his family wanted nothing to do with him, seemed unlikely. Christine picked up Nathan from Derek's apartment on a Saturday morning. I went with her. Derek answered the door looking like a ghost of himself. He'd lost weight. His eyes were bloodshot. His apartment was a mess, boxes everywhere, like he was preparing to run. Where is he? Christine asked, her voice steady. Derek stared at her for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in his expression. Regret? Anger? I couldn't tell. He's in his room, Derek said quietly. Christine walked past him without another word. I followed. Nathan was sitting on his bed, clutching his stuffed elephant, his eyes red from crying. When he saw Christine, his face lit up. Mommy. He launched himself into her arms, and Christine held him so tight I thought she'd never let go. I missed you so much, baby, she whispered into his hair. So much. Are we going home? Nathan asked. Yes. We're going home. She carried him out of the apartment, past Derek, who stood frozen in the doorway. As we reached the car, Derek called out, "Christine." She stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice was hoarse, broken. "I'm sorry for everything." Christine looked back at him then, and the expression on her face was something I'd never seen before. Not anger. Not hatred. Just nothing. "You should be," she said. And then she got into the car with Nathan and drove away. I stood there for a moment, looking at Derek Walsh, the man who'd destroyed my daughter, stolen my grandson, ruined my business. He looked small, defeated. And I realized I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. "You brought this on yourself," I said quietly. "I hope it was worth it." I got into my car and left him standing there. And I never looked back. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with me through this. Drop a comment and let me know what you're thinking, because this journey isn't quite over yet. And check the description box below for more stories about people who refused to let their betrayers win. Getting Nathan back didn't fix everything. Christine was still struggling financially. She'd found a part-time nursing job, but it wasn't enough to cover the mortgage on her house. She was still behind on payments, still drowning in debt from the custody battle. And I was still living in a motel. But for the first time in months, we had hope. And we had each other. A week after Nathan came home, Christine and I sat down at her kitchen table. The same table where we'd cried together so many times, and we made a plan. "I think I'm going to have to sell the house," Christine said, her voice resigned. "I can't keep up with the payments, and even with Derek paying child support, if he ever pays child support, I can't afford it." "Where will you go?" "I don't know. Maybe rent something smaller. An apartment." I thought about the duffel bag sitting in my motel room closet. The money I'd been hoarding, using sparingly, keeping as a safety net. $90,000. Minus the $5,000 I'd paid Janet, minus the few thousand I'd spent on rent and food. Enough to change everything. "What if you didn't have to sell?" I said carefully. Christine looked at me. "Mom, we've been through this. I can't take any more money from you. You've already given me everything." "I have money," I interrupted. "Real money. Enough to pay off your mortgage, get you caught up on bills, give you breathing room." She stared at me. "What are you talking about? Mom, you're living in a motel. You don't have." "I found something," I said. "After I lost the apartment. Something my mother left for me. $100,000, cash." I told her everything then. About finding the duffel bag, about my mother's letter, about Vincent Calloway and the life my mother had lived in secret. Christine listened in silence, her eyes growing wider with every word. "Mom," she finally said. That's insane." "I know. And you've just been sitting on it. Living in a motel when you could have." "I needed to make sure it was safe to use," I said. "I needed to make sure it couldn't be traced, that no one would come looking for it. And I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with it." "And what do you want to do with it?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "I want to help you. I want to make sure Nathan has a stable home. I want to give you the life Derek tried to take away from you." Christine's eyes filled with tears. "I can't let you do that. That money is yours." "It's ours," I corrected. "It's our family's. And family takes care of each other." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands, and I held her the way I'd held her when she was a little girl, when the world felt too big and too scary. "It's going to be okay," I whispered. "We're going to be okay." We used the money carefully, strategically. First, we paid off Christine's mortgage. All of it. $37,000, gone in a single cashier's check. Then we paid off her medical bills, her credit card debt, all the financial damage from the past year. With Nathan's custody secured and her debts cleared, Christine was able to return to full-time nursing at a different hospital, one with better pay and better hours. And me? I used $20,000 to put a down payment on a small condo not far from Christine's house. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen, but it was mine. Clean, quiet, safe. For the first time in months, I had a home again. I still had money left over. About $30,000. I thought about using it to start another business, But the truth was, I was tired. 63 years old and tired of fighting. So instead, I did something different. I started volunteering at a local tenants' rights organization, the same one that had helped publicize Derek's fraud case. They connected tenants with resources, helped them understand their rights, fought against predatory landlords and scam artists like Derek. It felt good. Purpose without the pressure. Helping without the burden of running a business, of being responsible for everything. And slowly, piece by piece, my life started to resemble something normal again. Christine thrived. With the financial pressure gone, with Nathan home, with therapy helping her process everything she'd been through, she became herself again. She laughed more. She smiled more. Nathan adjusted too. He asked about Derek sometimes, and Christine told him the truth, age-appropriate truth, but truth nonetheless. That daddy had made some bad choices. That sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and they have to face consequences. Nathan seemed to understand as much as a 4-year-old could. And me? I spent my days helping tenants, my evenings with Christine and Nathan, my nights reading in my little condo. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the life I'd had before Derek Walsh entered our world and burned everything down. But it was good. And it was mine. 3 months after the custody hearing, Derek pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. I didn't go to the sentencing. Neither did Christine. We heard about it secondhand, through Amanda Weston, who'd kept tabs on the case. He looked broken, she told us over the phone. He tried to give a statement about how sorry he was, how he'd made mistakes, but the judge shut him down. Said there was no excuse for exploiting vulnerable people, for using his position to steal from those who trusted him. Good, Christine said flatly. Monica Brennan was there, Amanda added. She tried to approach Christine outside the courthouse, but court security stopped her. I heard she's moved back in with her ex-husband in Florida. Guess he took her back. Good for her, I said, though I meant the opposite. 4 years. It felt like both too much and not enough. Too much because Nathan would be 8 when Derek got out, old enough to have faint memories of his father but not enough to really know him. Not enough because 4 years couldn't undo the damage Derek had caused, the lives he'd destroyed, the pain he'd inflicted. But it was something. And we'd won. 6 months after Derek's sentencing, Christine got engaged. His name was Paul Hendricks, a paramedic she'd met at the hospital. He was kind, patient, funny, and he adored Nathan. He was everything Derek wasn't. When Christine told me she was engaged, she cried. I didn't think I'd ever trust anyone again, Mom. I didn't think I'd ever want to. But Paul's different. Paul's different. He doesn't try to fix me or control me. He just loves me. For who I am, not who he wants me to be. I met Paul a week later, and within 5 minutes, I knew Christine had found the right person. He shook my hand and said, Mrs. Hartman, Christine told me everything you did for her. For Nathan. I just want you to know, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure she never has to go through something like that again. I believed him. The wedding was small, held in Christine's backyard with 30 guests and Nathan as the ring bearer. I stood next to Christine as she said her vows, and I thought about how far we'd come. From that dark place where everything felt hopeless and broken, to this moment of joy and new beginnings. And I thought about my mother, about the choices she'd made to keep me safe, about the money she'd hidden away for 15 years, waiting for the moment I'd need it. She'd given me more than money. She'd given me options. She'd given me power. She'd given me the ability to fight back when the world tried to bury me. And I'd used it. Not perfectly. Not without mistakes. But I'd used it to protect my family. To give my daughter a second chance. To give my grandson a future that didn't involve growing up under the shadow of a con artist father. As Christine and Paul kissed and everyone cheered, I felt something settle inside me. Peace. Not because everything was perfect. Not because the scars had disappeared. But because we'd survived. And sometimes, survival is its own kind of victory. If you're still here, still listening to this old woman's story, I want to thank you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, because knowing I'm not alone in this makes all the difference. And check that description box below. There are more stories like mine, stories about people who refused to stay down when life knocked them flat. Life settled into something resembling normal over the next year. Christine and Paul bought a house together, a modest 3-bedroom in a good school district. Nathan started kindergarten. I kept volunteering, kept helping tenants navigate the complicated world of renters' rights. I thought about Derek sometimes, but not often. He was serving his sentence at a medium-security prison about 2 hours outside Columbus, and as far as I knew, Christine never visited him. Nathan asked about his father occasionally, but less and less as time went on. Derek Walsh was becoming a ghost in our lives. A painful memory that grew fainter with each passing month. And then, almost exactly 2 years after his sentencing, I got a letter. It came to my condo, forwarded from my old apartment address. The envelope was thin, institutional, with a prison stamp in the corner. My hands shook as I opened it. Beverly, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you'll throw it away the moment you see my name. I wouldn't blame you if you did. But I needed to write this. I needed to try to explain, even though I know there's no explanation that makes what I did okay. I destroyed your daughter. I took your grandson. I ruined your business. I hurt you in ways I can't even fully comprehend, and I did it because I was selfish, arrogant, and cruel. I've had 2 years to think about it. 2 years in this place, with nothing but time to replay every decision I made, every lie I told, every person I hurt. I told myself I was the victim. That Christine was too demanding, that you were too controlling, that I deserved happiness even if it meant hurting people to get it. I believed my own lies so completely that I couldn't see what I was becoming. A fraud. In every sense of the word. I cheated on Christine. I used you. I stole from vulnerable people who trusted me. And I convinced myself I was justified because I'd spent so long feeling like I wasn't good enough, like I was always one step behind everyone else. But the truth is, I was never the victim. You were. Christine was. Nathan was. All those elderly tenants I stole from were. And I did it all because I was too much of a coward to face my own failures honestly. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you, from Christine, from Nathan. And I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. But it's the only thing I have left to give. Nathan won't remember me. Christine has moved on. I heard she got remarried. That's good. She deserves someone better than I ever was. And you. I hope you're okay, Beverly. I hope you rebuilt. I hope you found some kind of peace after everything I put you through. I wish I could take it all back. But I can't. So this is goodbye. I won't write again. I won't try to contact Christine or Nathan when I get out. I'll disappear from your lives the way I should have done from the beginning. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. Derek. I read the letter 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold in front of me. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied. Vindicated. He'd admitted everything. He'd acknowledged the damage he'd caused. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for the man he could have been if he hadn't been so consumed by his own insecurity. Sad for Christine, who'd loved him and been destroyed by that love. Sad for Nathan, who would grow up without a father because Derek had been too broken to be the man his son needed. I thought about writing back. About telling him I forgave him, or that I didn't, or that it didn't matter anymore. But in the end, I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and tucked it away in a drawer. Some things don't need a response. Some things just need to be acknowledged and then released. That weekend, I went to visit my mother's grave for the first time in years. It was in a small cemetery on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, a 2-hour drive from Columbus. I hadn't been back since her funeral, hadn't been able to face it. But I needed to now. I stood in front of her headstone, simple, just her name and dates, and I thought about everything she'd done for me. The secrets she'd kept. The choices she'd made. The money she'd hidden away, waiting for the moment I'd need it most. I found it, Mom, I said aloud, my voice catching. I found the money. And I used it. Not the way you probably imagined, but I used it to save Christine. To save Nathan. To give us all a second chance. The wind rustled through the trees, and I felt tears slip down my cheeks. I know you did things you weren't proud of. I know you kept secrets from me. But you also gave me everything. You taught me to be strong. To fight. To protect the people I love no matter what it costs. I knelt down and placed my hand on the cold stone. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for believing I was worth saving. I stayed there for a long time, talking to her, telling her about Christine and Nathan and Paul, about the life we'd built from the ashes of everything Derek had burned down. And I felt her presence, somehow. Not in any mystical way, but in the strength I'd inherited from her, in the resilience she'd passed down through her choices and sacrifices. She'd been flawed. Imperfect. She'd made mistakes. But she'd also been a survivor. And so was I. When I finally left the cemetery, I felt lighter than I had in years. 2 months later, Christine called me with news. Mom, I'm pregnant. I felt joy explode in my chest. Oh, sweetheart. That's wonderful. It is, isn't it? She sounded happy, truly happy, in a way I hadn't heard since before Derek. Paul's over the moon. Nathan's excited about being a big brother. And I feel like everything is finally falling into place. It is, baby. You've earned this. You've earned every bit of happiness coming your way. I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You know that, right? If you hadn't fought for me, if you hadn't found that evidence against Derek, if you hadn't been there every single day when I was falling apart. That's what mothers do, I said. We fight for our children, even when it costs us everything. I love you. I love you too. Christine gave birth to a baby girl 7 months later. They named her Rose, after my mother. I held her in the hospital, this tiny, perfect human who represented everything we'd fought for, everything we'd survived, and I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that motel room where I'd found my mother's hidden gift, to this moment of pure joy, we'd traveled through hell and come out the other side. Not unscathed. The scars were still there. The memories of what Derek had done, what we'd lost, would always be with us. But we'd survived. And we'd done more than survive. We'd rebuilt. We'd created something new, something stronger, something that couldn't be taken away by lies or betrayal or cruelty. We'd created a family that knew how to fight for each other. Nathan held his baby sister with the kind of gentle wonder only a 6-year-old can have, and he looked up at Christine with pure adoration. She's so small, Mommy. You were that small once, Christine said, her eyes shining with tears. Was I really? You really were. Paul stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders, and I saw the love in his eyes, the kind of love Derek had never been capable of giving. This was what winning looked like. Not revenge. Not destruction. Just this, a hospital room full of people who loved each other, who'd been broken and had healed, who'd been lost and had found their way home. I'm 65 years old now, and when people ask me about those dark months, the business I lost, the motel I lived in, the betrayal that nearly destroyed my family, I tell them the truth. I tell them about Derek Walsh, about how he stole everything from us and how we fought back. I tell them about my mother, about the secret she kept and the gift she left behind that saved us when we needed it most. I tell them about Janet Torres and her investigation, about the dominoes that fell and the justice that was served. And I tell them about Christine, about her strength, about how she rose from the ashes of her broken marriage and built a life more beautiful than anything Derek could have given her. But most of all, I tell them this. When someone betrays you, when they take everything and leave you with nothing, you have a choice. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it to discover strength you never knew you had. I chose strength. Christine chose strength. And together, we chose to fight. Not just for revenge. Not just for justice. But for the right to build our own future, on our own terms, without the weight of someone else's lies holding us down. Derek Walsh thought he could erase us. He thought he could rewrite history and pretend we never mattered. He was wrong. Because we're still here. Still standing. Still fighting. And that, more than anything else, is the greatest victory of all. The end. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight back when someone tried to take everything from you, leave a comment below and share your story. You're not alone. None of us are alone in this. And remember, sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us how strong we really are. This is Beverly Hartman, signing off. Thank you for listening. Asterisk.